Hello, welcome back. Tonight I will speak about a book that I have written called Lilith. And Lilith is a very special and unique character in my book. So, well, I do carry a lot of love and admiration for Lilith. One can learn a lot from Lilith, you know. It is a thematic that somehow seems a little far away, or it seems a little like I should not talk about her, or it feels a little bit like, no, I should not touch on that thematic. And say, well, if I was to have a library of endless books, which books would I choose to read or to write? And they say, well, there are a few special ones that I absolutely will never imagine not to write. And Lilith is one of that. Lilith is my special book. It is a very unique creation, and I understand the value and the story behind it. That's what created for me that love, or that admiration, or that interest that I have in the thematic of Lilith. And say, well, I'm a writer now, and say it is a special taste as well. And say if you are a connoisseur of wine, there's a certain type of wine that you know it's very, very good, the best, no? So, well, what is the best wine of a wine connoisseur? No, a master of the wine. We say, well, that's the quality of Lilith. So we always work in the synonymic way of talking. So the synonymic way of talking, it's almost to say, an example gives the answer, you know. It is a very helpful type of help that Lilith always brings. It is always a special wine or a special something, you know. And I think that's a very special quality of her. And Lilith does have a very interesting personality, and it does carry a lot of elements, even from the history, or even from the art, or even from different cultures, different languages. There is a beautiful recognition that comes towards her as well, to say, well, Lilith is known, no? That's the element of the Lilith. They say, well, it is it is an element, that can attract one to write a book about Lilith, and there are many other books about Lilith as well, not only mine. What makes my book special? I didn't read other books on Lilith, so I cannot compare to other books. But what makes my book of Lilith special, I will say, it is the quality of my own writing. The way that me as a writer chose to tell the story, or what type of story, or what type of representation of her, and say, well, it is my own creation. To say, well, it is a fictional book. It is almost to say, in a way, as a novel, but it is a grimoire because it is written in verse, in a hymn form, and that's the way I wanted to write it, because it carries a certain type of rhyme, it carries a certain type of rhythms that I enjoy writing. I like to write grimoires. And I have written 11 grimoires. Lilith is one of them, and all the other grimoires are masculine characters, and Lilith is the only feminine character from this list. And I will publish very soon in a digital format the collection of these 11 grimoires. Even Lilith will be included. All the grimoires that I have written until now, until one collection, until under one book, under one name, called Galactica, and it will be volume 1, because I will continue to write more grimoires, and I will continue to create a volume 2 of Galactica. But it will be a digital product. One can have it only in digital format. So of course, these two are interesting aspects of Lilith. So say, well, she's the only woman in that list. And say, well, that of course says something too about her, no? In the same time, say, well, I always try to follow the poetic feeling of Lilith, because that's the correct feeling. That's the beautiful light that Lilith deserves to be seen, no? That through that element of love and beauty. And in the other recordings, I have talked about the element of her skin, her hair, her appearance, her body, the way she looks, the way she appears in different paintings, her different animals that appear with her, the different elements that we have seen, and even ways not to recognize Lilith in places or in paintings, or that it is not, you are not able to see her, but still know that it is an element of Lilith, and so it is a form of acknowledging her as well. And the work on my book was made very fast. That always tells me that I was very excited about writing the Grimoire of Lilith. And I remember after I was saying very much that I wrote like the best book ever, and my book of Lilith is so good. I was like very happy about the result. To say, well, that was my goal as well. It's like I have to be happy with my book. And it does go around 200-300 pages, not too long, not too short, and it does tell a part now of the story of Lilith, or the way I imagined it in the story as well. And in the recordings came other very beautiful things about Lilith. That's why I say, well, it is helpful as well not to learn even more about Lilith and be able to meditate on the thematic. And I think reading a book on Lilith or specific on Lilith is very helpful as well, or can be very helpful, or it is in the meaning of like, it is a beautiful book or a beautiful story behind that name. And tonight I would still like to speak about some other new aspects on her thematic. So, well, we did speak quite much and in detail, which is another element of Lilith as well, the element of the details. And so, well, her paintings are often created with very fine detail and a lot of penmanship, a lot of craftsmanship, a lot of talent. And there is attention to detail, attention to form, attention to there is the element of the air. It's almost like her hair is floating in the air. It's the element of the hair, no? It's even her ha in the Lilith. You don't hear it. It's just Lilith. It's just like a suspiro. The Lilith. It just pushed out the air out. It's very much speaks about her. There's always the element of the wind, is what I want to say. It's always an element of like the wind is blowing, the wind is blowing in your face, or the tree is bending because of a very strong wind. That's very much Lilith, especially when it happens in the night. The element of the screeching owl, it is Lilith. The element of the thunderstorm, also, this element of the rain as well. Even the water that is pouring down on a cave or on the mountain, that is very much Lilith. It combines. I can go in each one in detail and prove it, so I know it is Lilith. These are all her elements that combine and creates that special type of spark of magic. It speaks about her divine origin, and that is Lilith. No one can tell me otherwise. The element of the cave as well, definitely very much Lilith. The cave too is a riddle in its own question. The cave too has a story. The cave too wants its story to be known. It is a type of magnetic pull that a cave has. And some caves you cannot enter, are blocked. This too very much Lilith. It is on this aspect of yes and no. And it's quite an interesting aspect for me as well, the element of the cave, which is for me, from everything I know until now, like for me, particularly my opinion, the cave is the element very much Lilith, the most important from all. It speaks to me most about Lilith, the element of the cave. And even a quiet night with a dark blue or very interesting type of sky, you know, like it's like a dark, sometimes you can see like dark clouds or very interesting, very beautiful blue or even a little purple in the dark night sky, but not yet total dark, no? And then with the stars especially, is very much Lilith. It is not a midday sun, no, it is that specific moment where it's, even when you don't see the sun anymore, it's really very much already dark outside, but not yet. And sometimes appear white or darker clouds, or it's just some rain, or you know, or you can see the stars, or even the moon has a special representation as well. But I say, well, the element of the star is more important than the element of the moon when it comes to Lilith as well. And the element of the cold, we'll say, well, it is in general the main, we start with the element of water. As I said, is very much Lilith, even her name, Lily, the water lily, and not only, it is the element of Lilith is the water, but in all the different forms, especially in the frozen aspect or in the melting aspect of that ice or snow. That's very much Lilith as well, element of her. It's that coldness that comes together with the warmth of the light sun, or the something changes, or it's the moment where the day meets the night, or it's the moment when you see a landscape that is totally untouched. Is almost to say no one is there, but you are. It's very much Lilith. Especially if you see a specific tree or there is snow outside, and especially if you have you're alone and you see a lot of snow and trees and birds, and so you are on Lilith's territory. It's there, it's Lilith. That's the element of Lilith. Even element of flowers, if they appear, you know, so well, it is that magical aspect of the forest, of the wood, which is very much Lilith. And I do have memories when I was a child. I did feel the magical places, and so well, I knew that the magical forest, or I knew without knowing, there was no reason for me to believe that, but I've been there once and I experienced in that way, and I never went back in a way. I said that's like a magical forest for me, or a cave that seemed very magical, but I never went there, or if I went, it was closed. But it was that element of that magnetic pull that one feels, or I said the element of the nature, especially when there is snow or specific tree, or an owl, especially if the owl sits on the tree, that's very much Lilith, or if a lot of birds, the flocking or birds, or all these elements, is Lilith. Especially if it's at the evening or in the night. That is, of course, even more, the element of the night magnetizes her powers as well. That's why, you know, it appears in those elements. Or if you hear like in nature, you can hear like strange sounds in the night, especially birds, something like that. It's very loud, and maybe just once a screeching or something like that. That's too very much Lilith's element of the birds, of the element that she carries, especially the owl. So there are, I would say, well, different elements that we see that are all part of the nature. We have the water, we have the rain, we have the snow, we have the ice, no? It's very much on the element of the water, as I said, and on the frozen element, of the cold element. And I'd say, well, the color of Lilith is white, but that white is always a little bit stained with a little blue, sometimes a little gray, a little yellow, sometimes a little, it can be even red, or there is always an interesting aspect. That's what I want to say. It's like when you look at the wings of a butterfly, you see all the beautiful patterns, and it's so like they never end. It's like, oh, line this, point, color this, change this form. It's so nicely made. And so even her shape, maybe what it means is that it can change. It's the element of Lilith that change in a way, in nature that we are able to see. There is the element of the change, when the evening comes. We say, well, it is the element of the night. Other elements that I will can specify, I will say, yes, of course, the white is the predominant color, as I've said, but sometimes the element of the dark, and then it can be very dark, like a polished stone, or some type of tree in the nature, or I don't know, like some type of water, or some type of of course there are other elements. So in this environment, even the snake appears, that's very much an element of Lilith. It's almost like a more dry environment, It's like, well, people believe snakes like cold and wet environment, but it's not true. They like warm and dry environments, but sometimes they do need to, go to the water element, but they are more. The snake is always connected to the sun. It's wrong. People imagine snakes in water, or the element of water to snake, but it is not. It is the element of the sun, of the fire. So almost like, well, a snake is not so much far away from a bird, meaning of, in a way, like, well, of course there is a huge difference, but the birds do have this colder element of like the snake as well, and they like drier and, as I said, warm environments. They don't like cold and wet environments. But the elements where Lilith appears, there is always element of the water. If it's not the element of the water, it's not Lilith. The element of the water is always present. Always, doesn't matter which form. But as I said, yes, because that form too tells something. Especially if the meaning is, well, in that part where Lily appears, everything has a specific meaning that goes towards her. She does take that element of who she is. So the element of the white, the blue element of like a hue of blue or green or brown or yellow, as I said, there are always other very fine elements of Lilith as well. It's almost like in a landscape you will see like the snow, but then you see plants which have these colors that are into the snow as well. It's almost like sometimes her appearance or landscapes are very greenish and flowerish, and sometimes they're very desolate and very much on the snow side, and a few plants dried. It becomes a little more grayish or more brownish or more yellowish, but still very light. So there's like slightly changes as well. And of course the forest. You say, well, we spoke a lot about the tree, but of course the tree is the forest is the tree. So it's a tree and forest are synonym. It just means more. And the forest, of course, is the element of Lilith. That is the element of Lilith that, she does appear in my paintings with the element of the tree, the element of the forest, with the element of the owl, the element of the snake, with the element of the stars that we have spoken of. So they say, well, there are these representations of her. But they say, well, it does not tell us everything about Lilith. There are just aspects, as I said, they are just simple aspects. It's just like a list, it's actually a little rude for me to do that, but it just gives us, something to work on. So, well, of course, the thematic goes further on. So this is not most interesting part. No, this was more like the work in a way. So Lilith has some characteristics that do come out in a few examples, no, or that for sure I can give, or it can give us a total new understanding on the thematic as well. It is not the facts. So everyone thinks, so let's find the truth. Let's check the facts. No, the facts will not tell you the truth. They say, to reach the truth is this a longer corridor always. And in the case of Lilith, things seem complicated, but they are not. Things are always actually very, very simple. That element of simplicity is always very much Lilith. The element of the barefoot, the way she appears, one can understand very much. So the things that surround her are the things that she loves, Lilith loves, and love her back. It's the element of that reflection. So it is, as I said in the beginning, a synonym type of work, and it does not work on the old formula to say, if it's the snake means this. No, it is not enough to describe Lilith. That's what I want to try to say. And I'd say the element of the landscape, it's always what brings one, the element of Lilith. It can be a little river, it can be a little, more frozen landscape or colder landscape, or it can be something very like forest, lavish green, no? But it does not say that is what I mean, that Lilith is that element, and it's a lot of elements combined. It's like one has to train the eye, and not even then. So it is not like one can pinpoint, and it does not acquire, or it does not go in that way to Lilith. And but to say, she does carry the simplicity, but there are a few steps to that. So there's a certain atmosphere that comes with Lilith, no? And the element of the solitude, what I want to say, is a very important aspect of Lilith. If the element of solitude is not there, it is not Lilith. It is not Lilith, the element of solitude. That's another aspect. So it is white. White is very solitude color, no? And so maybe all the other colors would like to have white, but it's not, so white is that pure part of that, what the color represents, no? And that is that's why I say it is the color of Lilith, for that understanding as well. And the element of nature do combine very nicely together. So the element of the beautiful valley, the element of the beautiful hills, the element of the beautiful forest, the element of the beautiful sky, and then all those changes, that comes from the morning, the evening, how it changes, and the element of the change, or of the rain, or the different seasons that, as I've said, frozen landscape is a big part of that transformation, and it is, winter is our fourth season, it is the last season, we say, it is the most beautiful, it is, does create something very beautiful in nature. Especially because it brings that element of the white with it. And of course, the element of the white appears all through the year. So of course, in spring we have all the colors, we have the white, So yes, but the element of the winter and the frozen landscape is element of Lilith. And so it is more the wet or the colder environment. I say, even from the element of the night is in general cooler or more wet, no? The night is outside, the air gets wet too as well. Another element, I will say, the element after the rain, especially the summer rain, the 2 is very much Lilith, is that element of the, say, certain simplicity that Lilith carries, the element of the barefoot or playing with the feet in the water after the rain or the road. The 2 is very much Lilith, that element of that childish aspect, but not in the meaning of childish, is that part of the eternal young or eternal. So Lilith does carry that type of joy. It is her environment, that's what she likes. Or the frozen aspect of the frozen water is very interesting as well, and that beautiful aspect of the shimmering snow in the daylight or in the sunlight. But as I've said, always the snow with element of blue, especially when if it's like a blue hue around it white. The 2 is very much Lilith, or the hue green. This 2 is very much Lilith. If black appears, then it's like very black, and then you have a little more grayish or brownish tones. So it moves a little on the colder, and then a little bit softer, but all very much on the white element. I do find the paintings of her, the way she's represented, very, very beautiful, and they do bring her that, or those elements, they do represent her, no? And I wanted to say to the element of the river, it can be even a little river, maybe in general it is a more little river. The 2 is very much element of Lilith. And the element of the shadow, that's even more the colder part or the wetter, it's the element of Lilith as well. Or even places like forest that is impossible to enter or very difficult, or there are even forests, maybe people sometimes go and say, this forest looks so magical or something, maybe it is, maybe it's very much element of Lilith as well there. So it's the element of the tree, but in general it is less the forest, it is much more the element of Lilith and the tree. So that the forest, as I've said, is not necessarily only if it is a natural habitat that Lilith appear, or say, the element of the cave, or the element of something where it rains a lot, is the element of the green, is the element of the different animals, or the element where the snake is, So the snake is far from most, after the cave, the second most important symbol of Lilith. And the water that comes off a cliff, or the water that falls in this cascade, that too is very much Lilith. It's like the water almost becomes white then, And the element of the stone, of course, is connected to the element of the mountains, or the cave. And so the river or the water has carved that place, it's the element of the water. So I say it is the element of Lilith. And the most representation I've seen are the element of her in a snowy, cold environment that carries that element of the solitude, the element of the trees, the element of the different, things that one sees, birds or little plants, or it's that simplicity, or little stones, or little, it is, I say, something simple, but so it is more on the colder, wetter type of tones, it moves more into the wet than in the element of the dry. But I said they do not exclude each other. So maybe sometimes it is the element of the hot, but then it appears the element of Lilith. It's not that it's not correct. That's what I want to say again. But definitely the element of the hills, or different places I've said, or it can be a cave, or it can be, but most of these experiences happen when you are by yourself. There's the element of Lilith as well, the element of the solitude. And then, there is a certain reaction. So, if you're alone, And then it is it's just something, you know, you feel or you hear or you see or you just imagine. So, well, it can be even a very special tree or a specific tree. You say, why that tree, not all the others? Because you just know it's that tree, you know. There's something. It does not have to be logically explained. That's very much Lilith. So she appears in, if she appears in the landscape, she appears in all the elements that are in that landscape as well. She does carry, so well, it is not, it does fit, you know, so well, you have the water, you have the birds, you have this, you know. It is very much the element of how nature represents her. But in the paintings, it's the most beautiful to see, because I do think they carry that poetic feeling, you know, that Lilith does definitely carry. And there's the element of sensuality, there's the element of that sensual, beautiful innocence of Lilith, or that natural aspect of her innocence. It, you know, it does speak very much about that element of the white, which is represented by the element of course purity, innocence. And there are many other things, no, that are interesting when it comes to Lilith. It does carry many different meanings, and I think so. Well, it does. It does create at the same time a corridor for me too. So well, there are different interesting aspects of Lilith, but as I've said, are not necessarily the differences that make Lilith who she is, no? Even if so well, it is this element and this element and this element, say yes, but at the same time it does not necessarily describe her, you know? There is that element of Lilith. There is it's almost like when she appears in a painting, she's absent from those paintings, no? This element of the absence, no? That's how I see it in the paintings. And in the meaning of the absence, the element of the solitude, no? That she is very much enjoying that moment by herself, and say, well, it is not necessarily true, because she's not always alone, or as I say, she's never alone. And even in that solitude elements of that, or elements that seem a little bit like far, not so many, you know, in those elements she does show herself. It is almost like a specific choice or a specific moment, no? And the element of the screeching owl, I think it's a very interesting one. And so, well, it is a very pleasurable sound to hear, you know, very special as well, very unique. And so, well, the sound that the owl makes, or the sound that other birds make, it is a very interesting sound. And I say, well, of course, the birds are very much connected to the tree or the trees. And so, well, the trees and birds, you know, they are like twin sisters, no? They always are, so well, they're very connected, very much so. Another thing which I like, there is that element of that beautiful elements that the birds do bring. That's the element of birds. So, well, they are the most pleasant and more smart and beautiful, no? So, well, it is a lot of, you know, birds have a lot of special qualities, very interesting the way they look, they have very interesting sounds, they have very interesting appearances, personalities. Of course, I say the birds are, you know, good parents, and they say what they do raise their you know, there is that element, you know, of the mother that connects very much to Lilith as well. That's like a big representation, no? That it is correct as well. In my opinion, the element of the mother, it's that element, no? So what the birds are good taken care of. It's the element of the owl. Well, say, well, that wisdom is for something. That's very much Lilith. So everyone likes to say, well, wisdom, this, that. So, well, but is that wisdom put to truth? You know, that's very much Lilith. And how to say, well, the owl seems to just sit on a tree and not mind or not understand, no, the element there is just a bird. And so, well, yes, it is just a bird, but it does bring very much beauty to that place, no? So, well, they are very special, and they have very special abilities, and they're very beautiful birds. And so, well, all birds are beautiful, and that's, I would say, a good description of Lilith as well. So, well, if we say she's element of the birds, that does include an element of the beauty, you know. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen more about Lilith, there is a link in the description box below with the playlist of Lilith, and I do have other playlists where I talk about other books of mine. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, bye.